Thank you to today's show sponsor, Azalea Orthopedics. They are a group of highly trained physicians and surgeons in East Texas that will meet all of your orthopedic needs. To learn more about Azalea Orthopedics, go to azaleaortho.com. That is azaleaortho.com. Welcome to Getting Real to Heal with Dr. Grace. I am Dr. Grace English, founder of Deep in the Heart Ministries. We are a ministry that exists to tackle the hard realities of this life through the power of Jesus Christ. He is the only one that can set us free from our addictions, our negative thoughts and emotions, and bring us the true lasting healing and peace that He wants for our lives. Welcome to Getting Real to Heal with Dr. Grace. Thank you so much for joining us today. Today's episode is going to be talking about healing from the tragic effects of abortion and Christ's forgiveness. Even with Roe v. Wade being overturned in 2022, unfortunately, many women are still getting abortions. It's stated that 1 out of 4 women by the age of 45 will have an abortion in the United States. And with the onset of the medication abortion pill, RU486, women now can get abortion tablets even if they live in a state that the abortion is illegal. So there's still so much education that needs to be done about the aftermath of abortion and its effects on the men and women that are left behind. Today's special guest is my friend, Jennifer Comeaux. And Jennifer, I met her several months ago. She now is the executive director of CARE, which is Christ-Centered Abortion Recovery and Education. And she has been married to Daniel for over 12 years. And they have 6 kids. They have a blended family, and 3 of them live in East Texas with them. Jennifer has been very active in serving and volunteering at churches, at pregnancy resource centers, and at CASA. And so today, Jennifer is going to share her very heart-touching story about the loss of her 2 babies through abortion and how the abortions had such an effect on her life. But the story doesn't end there. And so, welcome to the show, Jennifer.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
I'm so glad you're here. So, all right, Jen. So, tell the listeners kind of like where you grew up and what was your family of origin like?
Yeah, absolutely. I grew up, born and raised in Northern California. My family of origin was a chaotic one. I'm the oldest of 4. My mom has had 3 marriages, and so I did not grow up with my birth father, but I grew up with my stepfather predominantly most of my childhood.
Wow. So did you have siblings?
I did. I have, or do. I have twin sisters and a younger brother.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
But you're the oldest.
I am the oldest, yeah.
Right. So it sounds like your grown-up years, they were chaotic.
Yes.
And so when did you start kind of like, kind of living your own life? And it sounds like your parents really weren't too aware of what was going on with you.
Yeah.
And so tell us kind of what are the choices that you made that kind of put you into that first unplanned pregnancy?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, my parents were definitely very focused on a lot of their own issues, and I really didn't feel like I had a lot of the love that I needed at a young age. So at a young age, I did go through sexual trauma, and as far as it leading into those decisions, I think part of that was constantly seeking that love and affirmation in relationships. And so that made me promiscuous and getting into relationships that were unhealthy and toxic for me.
Right,
Yeah.
right. So how old were you when you found yourself in your first pregnancy?
My first pregnancy was 19 years old.
You were 19, okay. My childhood is somewhat similar as well. I mean, my parents were always there, Jennifer, but they were emotionally absent, and I never really had affirmation from them. And so, not that it was an excuse, but when I became, a young college student, that I was looking for love in all the wrong places as well. Mm-hmm. And so how did you feel when you first got that pregnancy test? What were your emotions like?
Yeah, the first pregnancy test I got while I was away from home, traveling, completely lost in my own escapism, and really just trying to sort of lose myself into another world. And so when that came about, it was sort of an abrupt halt to that, and sort of a reality that I don't think I was prepared to deal with or understand what that really meant for me.
Did you have anybody to talk to?
No. It was very much a secret, kept to myself. My peers were the ones that I would speak to, which, as we know, are not always the best resources. Yeah.
So was the father of the baby, did he have a say-so if he wanted to have the child or not?
Yes, I was very open and honest with him. And I think wanting him to have the right response of that he would be there and he would love the child and he would support the child, not even so much just me, although I think I was looking for that love and affirmation. But his immediate response was, well, obviously we're going to have an abortion, or you're going to have an abortion.
Okay.
And so that was fairly jarring.
Okay. So honestly, you felt like you had no choice.
Yeah.
Like you were just only 19, y'all weren't married. You don't have a job per se to support start a family. And so you then made that, decision, a very hard decision to have the abortion. And so, Jennifer, what was your life like after you had that abortion? Did you see a drastic change in how you saw life and how you saw yourself?
Yeah. So if prior to that I was struggling with love and acceptance and, really feeling a place of belonging, I would say after my first abortion, I spiraled out of control in terms of desperately seeking it from any resource that I could find, really just not knowing who I was, not even understanding my escapism or how I was not processing grief.
Right.
From the abortion and from all the feelings that I just would have rather pushed away than deal with.
Well, with abortion, you can't process grief. You're not even allowed truly to even process it on a conscious level, even if it's just to yourself.
Yeah.
Because it is a decision that you made. And so your relationship with the young man, that disintegrated anyways, despite you having the abortion. And so, and most relationships don't ever last after an abortion has occurred between the man and the woman. And so when you say escapism, are you talking more like, I know for me, after my abortion at the age of 18, I fell first and foremost into a life of just drugs and drinking and partying and just doing things just to numb out the memory of what I had chosen to do. I didn't realize that at the time that I was going through post-traumatic stress, from the abortion, not until years later.
Yeah.
And so didn't know if that was kind of like your story as well. Well,
yeah, absolutely. I think that was being in a peer group with free access to all of those things. It was just an easy way to ignore my feelings and to be able to kind of escape into that. So alcohol, drugs were a predominant time in a period of that time for about 2 years. And a lot of those lies that I would tell myself that I deserved it, that, I was going to hell anyways, so just a real abandonment of self in that time, to continue to look for love in all the wrong places instead of the right place. Yeah,
I know. And so I read a stat once that women who've had one abortion, they're more likely to have a second one. Yeah. And for so many reasons that you just think inside, well, I've had one already. I'm already damaged. It doesn't really matter how many more I have. And, some women use it as birth control, but it's so much more than just birth control. And so obviously, I mean, you are leading this crazy life, and then you found yourself again in a second unplanned pregnancy. And kind of tell us what happened there.
Yeah, very shortly afterwards, about a year and a half after my first pregnancy, completely lost. But this time I thought I was in a relationship that was really loving. I had decided to leave this traveling experience that I was on. I actually felt like the pregnancy, I was more aware this time, was somewhat of a gift. And so I was very excited to tell my boyfriend and thought, he loved me. We were going to go on this journey together. I was actually ready to parent at this time, which makes it even more devastating.
But what was his response?
His response was an immediate, no, we're not going to do that. I'll send you the $300. I was shocked by that response.
And your parents, you didn't have any parents to go actually talk to?
Yeah, no, that would have been something that I was already perceived as the black sheep of the family for whatever various reasons. And something like that wouldn't necessarily have been an additional shame, but I think it would have been another failure in my eyes instead of presenting myself in whatever I thought was worthy or deemed worthy in their minds. Yeah.
So I'm sure when the father of the baby told you that you need to have an abortion, I am sure that just crushed you. But then you probably, again, felt like you had no choice and that abortion would be the best option for you.
Yeah.
And so tell us about the second abortion. I know that with the first abortion, you have shared with me that it was your routine, surgical abortion that, most women prior to the 2000s would get surgical abortions. But then now we do have the chemical medication abortion.
Yes.
And the second one was a medication abortion, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
The first one was at a Planned Parenthood, and the second one was at a clinic.
Right. And with the medication abortion, I know that Planned Parenthood, they make it sound like it's just like taking pills and having a normal cycle.
Yes. Yeah.
And I know that that is not truth.
Right.
I have heard of women being absolutely, devastated when they see that they have had a successful abortion and the fetal parts are in the toilet. And I can't even imagine how traumatic that would be for a young woman.
Yeah.
And so, and I know the medication abortions, they have complications.
Yeah.
It's not just pop 2 pills and then you move on with your life.
Yeah.
And it's just really unfortunate, Jennifer. A lot of women can now get the medication abortion pills across state lines. Yeah. And they're getting it from non-physicians who are not practicing good medicine. They are not doing an ultrasound before to assess that the baby is, not an ectopic pregnancy. And a physician's not even truly involved. And so it's, to me, it's just very, very dangerous.
Yes, I completely agree.
It's very dangerous. And so after that, after your second abortion, did your life just even crater even more?
I think at that time, it was, to answer your previous question, it was excruciating. The worst pain I've probably felt in my entire life. And when that movie Unplanned came out, I, point everyone to that movie because it is such an accurate description and depiction of what that actually feels like. And I think we're not educating women enough who are doing this alone in their bathrooms and are suffering and hemorrhaging.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So as far as my life after that point, I started to get my life together after that. I felt such shame and such regret for what I had done and just disgusted with myself that I finally had that sort of moment where I feel like I hit rock bottom at that point, and was very keen on getting my life together. What that looked like for me was more professional than spiritual, but I did start a trajectory towards getting my life together.
Good.
Yeah.
Good. Because you just knew something has to change.
Yeah, I knew what am I doing? This is insane.
Right. Or I'm just going to be heading down the same road.
Yeah.
And so you did. So you went to school, got a degree, started working,
right.
And you just kind of shut those 2 abortions out. Like you never thought about those abortions again.
No.
Okay.
No, not until I had children.
Okay. Okay. So that's funny that you mentioned that because my abortion, when I became a believer later in life, I just knew on paper that Jesus could forgive me of my abortions.
Yeah.
But that was really just on paper. It was not anything I wanted to process,
Yeah.
Obviously, he knew about the abortions, but not until I started having children did I realize that there's so much more to this.
Yeah.
And he wanted to take me down this road that I really needed to go down on. And so tell us about that. How did you feel when you started having, your children?
Excuse me, I'm sorry. One of the, permeating thoughts every time each time I would get pregnant was, oh gosh, something's going to be wrong with this baby. I don't deserve to have a healthy child.
Yeah.
And I now know that to be a post-traumatic response to abortion. But at the time, I just thought, all these horrible things. So I lived my entire pregnancies in such fear and anxiety, even when they would say everything was fine. And so it really gave me a lack of ability to connect with my kids when they were born. It just robbed me of some of those opportunities.
Right.
And I think those have lasting effects,
Right.
that connection between infant and mother.
Right.
And then my second child, they use that term of, risk abortion when you have a possibility of miscarriage. And I think when they said that, now luckily she came to be and she's lovely and 13 now, but I was terrified at the thought of that. And it just kind of brought things forward.
Because you felt like it would be punishment. It would be just punishment because of what you had chosen to do.
Absolutely.
And so you were struggling with post-abortion stuff. Yeah. And so, and a lot of women do have fears of never, ever having children or, having infertility or their loss of child and all of that. And so, but it's just when you become a mom, it's just there's so many emotions anyways that you're having to handle. And so I'm sure it was difficult to really enjoy this newborn miracle of life that God has given you. You couldn't enjoy it to the fullest as you would have.
Absolutely.
And so when did the Lord really start tugging at your heart about, Jen, I really need you to get real with me about what has happened?
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny. We have similar stories in so many ways. I became a believer late in life. I was into my second marriage about 3 months, and it was just falling apart everywhere because of all the trauma that I just had not processed and dealt with. So very earnestly, the Lord just sort of called me to him. I started going to a church where I went through childhood sexual trauma recovery. And directly after that, I had an experience with the Lord that showed me the truth of conception.
Wow. Wow. Childhood sexual trauma is a whole nother topic in itself. Yeah. And there are so many girls who have been sexually abused who have never told a soul and haven't had healing, and it affects you to the core.
Yeah.
And so that was really very sweet that you started going to church, received Jesus as your Savior. Yep. He then started you on this path of healing.
Yeah.
And first, the traumatic, abuse that she had as a young child. But then after that, that's when he started showing you what he says about what the miracle of life is.
Yeah, absolutely. He's very gentle with me, very kind to heal those things, and then show me truth, and really meet me where I was at, which I think is so important.
Right. So did you go through an abortion recovery Bible study?
I did.
Okay.
Yeah, very directly after that, I went through Surrendering the Secret.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. And then I know when I went through my Surrendering the Secret study, Jen, all the pieces of the puzzle just connected.
Yes.
You're like, so that's why I feel the way I do.
Yeah.
And that's why I developed this after the abortion. And I mean, I had no idea.
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely no idea. And I want to encourage those of you who may be listening to this podcast, if you are post-abortive and have had abortion in the past, that there's nothing that Jesus can't forgive you of. And so, I know listening to the story may be very hard for you because you're not on the other side yet, but there really is true healing and forgiveness that Jesus wants to lavish on you. But you do have to invite him into that pain, into confession and repentance.
Yes.
And so through that study, the Lord revealed to you the genders of your two babies?
Yes. A beautiful moment with the Lord. And I knew that my first child was a son, a boy. And the Lord gave me his name. And I knew my second was a daughter. And the Lord gave me her name as well. And just tremendous healing and processing through that.
Wonderful. Yeah, that is really sweet when during the study at the end you have a time of memorializing your babies.
Yeah.
Because they have souls and we will meet them the day we enter heaven.
Yes. Can't wait.
And I tell people that, the abortion is going to be probably one of the most traumatic things that you'll ever ever go through. But the moment that your child took their last breath, it was followed by their first breath with the Lord.
Yes.
Like Jesus was like, I'm going to take you.
Yeah.
And your child's okay.
Yeah.
And so it just kind of makes me want to cry, but because God in his mercy just knew, and Jesus knew what that abortion was going to do to us.
Yeah.
And so have you been able to share with your living children?
Yeah.
What has happened?
Yeah, it's wonderful because as the Lord gave me their names and just really gave me that healing and clarity, I don't think I had ever spoke about them in any specific way, specifically to their names or their lives or any of those things. And then I just wouldn't stop talking about them after that. So my kids knew from a very young age. I was very open and shared my story with them.
Wow.
They were probably the first people I shared my story with. And of course, being kids, they were completely non-judgmental and loving.
Right.
And if you ask them today, they'll tell you about all their siblings that are in heaven and when they get to meet them. Yeah.
Well, that is a testimony of what God has done in your life, Jennifer. And your kids are seeing that.
Yeah.
And they know that that no one's without fault. If they mess up, do something, you're there. You're able to be there for them, and you're not going to judge them.
Yeah,
absolutely. And so yeah, it's kind of once you have that healing from the Lord, and you realize that your abortion is no longer the centerpiece of your story.
Yes,
but it's Christ's sacrifice on the cross. You honestly cannot stop talking about what He's done, and so it's kind of interesting that He's put you into this role of executive director of care, and I'm sure you never realized that would be something you'd ever do.
Yeah, no. Very quickly after I received my healing, I ran into the mega church, and I just was telling every pastor and every women's pastor, we must have this study. This is how we do it. And God just continued to bring relationships along my path through that time, where I'd always share, would never be hesitant to share and help people, find that truth. but this opportunity was definitely outside of my view for my life.
Right. It always is. So, but I remember, Jennifer, when I would facilitate the Bible studies, when I would have women that would come in, they were terrified. I was terrified when I went into my own personal healing study, but I just remember just seeing their faces, and I want to read Psalm 32, 3-5. It says, "When I kept silent, my bones wasted away through my groaning all day long. For day and night your hand was heavy on me. My strength was sapped as in the heat of summer. Then I acknowledged my sin to you and did not cover up my iniquity. I said, I will confess my transgressions to the Lord, and you forgave the guilt of my sin." And so you see that transformation that happens to these women as the Lord continues to prod them along their healing. And there's just such a difference at the end of the study for these ladies. It's just such a joy that you can't even express.
It's beautiful. I hear so many different things from women as they come in, and the burden and the weight that they carry. And just for some of them, most of them actually, it's the very first time they've ever been able to confess in a place where they feel safe and they feel not judged but loved.
Right.
And that is transformative all in itself.
Right. No, that is wonderful. And I know the healing obviously spilled over into your marriage as well, because once you realize that, we are worthy, we are loved, we are accepted, that nothing that we could ever do could take away the Lord's love from us. And so, and then he starts to change all those lies that we believed about ourselves. And then we go into his word in scripture and look at the truth of who he says he is and who he says we are. And it is definitely a remarkable transformation, of the heart. And so Jen, tell us about, I actually brought the study, the Surrendering the Secret book. They have an updated version now.
Yes.
But this is the book that I personally used when I went through my study. And then we also have a book for Healing the Father's Heart. It is for men who have lost babies to abortion. And men, and I'll have Jen talk about this as well, but men definitely are impacted by abortion.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so I feel like in so many ways, men are even more impacted, I think, than women, because God has called them to be the protector and the provider and the procreator, and abortion just nixes all of that out.
Right.
And men really just struggle in life after, an abortion. So, but anyhow, but there is definitely hope and healing for men, and care they do. We do have, abortion recovery for men as well.
Yes.
So if you are a man and this is your story, please reach out to Jennifer. She can get you in touch with somebody who can help you walk through this journey. And, and there's so much healing in there, and the relationship with the Lord is going to be so much more closer and intimate, Right. And so, but anyways, Jennifer, so is there anything you would like to say to our listeners as far as if they've, have had a past abortion in their life, and they have not even told a soul? What would you tell them?
Yeah, absolutely. We have a group every week that meets just for that sole purpose, just to have a safe place to be able to confess some of those hurts and be met with truths. And I would say my story is just one of millions that are out there with all their own complexities and emotions. And, every time I hear someone's story, I see God's move in their life. I see how he's brought them to the place where they can be met with love and compassion. And I feel a great burden to do that, with the Holy Spirit leading everything. But you said it earlier, that it isn't the end of our story. It certainly wasn't the end of my story. And I've seen these women go on to have dynamic lives, full, and there's just such a freedom that they walk in after releasing this. They can know the Lord for many years, but this is a separation. It's something that we feel we have to hide, and He knows it, and He wants to heal us from it. So really just that tugging that He's putting on your hearts, if you're listening to this or you come across something, just take that step.
Right.
Because what He has for you is beautiful, and this isn't the end of your story.
Right. Right. So many people feel like it's just too painful to go back there, but, I know, and Jennifer knows, that once you make that first bold step of picking up that telephone and just saying you need help, you are going to be surrounded by other women who are just going to love and pray for you and support you. And once you're able to tell your story, the Lord told me one time, Jennifer, the power of the secret is broken when it's spoken. So that there's no power left in that secret.
Yeah.
And
absolutely.
so, we're not saying that you need to tell the world and get on a podcast and talk about your abortion.
Yeah.
But there is somebody that God has in your life that you can pick up that phone and tell them.
Yeah.
And ask them for prayer and ask them for help.
Yeah.
And in the show notes, we have the website to careabortionrecovery.com, and then Jennifer's contact information. And definitely you can reach out to Jennifer.
Yes.
And it's all private, confidential, and she is here to start helping you get on your journey so you can live the abundant life that Christ came and died on the cross for us, so we could have.
Yeah.
But we first have to get real with ourselves, get real with the Lord, and invite Him into that really closed off, painful place that we thought we would never have to deal with again.
Yes.
And so, but anyways, thank you so much, Jennifer, for being on the show. I feel that the listeners have a better understanding of just the tragic effects of abortion, in addition to just the addictive behaviors. Many women have depression, develop an eating disorder, and it's, it just rears its ugly head in so many different ways. And not until you hit the core of what the problem is, the Lord can't change anything in your life.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so, but yes, I think this definitely will help anyone who's listening to know that there is a safe place for them.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that the Lord has their baby, and he or she has a name.
Yeah.
And one day they will be reunited with them, and it's going to be beautiful, because Jesus is a God of healing and a God of restoration.
Yes, He is.
So anyhow, well, thank you so much, Jennifer. Thank you for joining us on today's Getting Real to Heal with Dr. Grace, and we will see you the next time. Bye now. Thank you to today's show sponsor, Express Employment Professionals. They are the leading staffing agency in East Texas, and they have helped thousands of businesses and companies find the right employees. If you are somebody that's looking for a job, Express Employment Professionals can also help you. Go to expresspros.com. That is expresspros.com. If you liked what you heard today and you want these Jesus stories to go out into the world, please consider giving to deepintheheartministries.com. You can also get a hold of me at grace@drgraceenglish.com.